The moment Marcus placed the steaming cup of coffee on her table, the elderly woman in the wheelchair looked up at him with eyes that held a lifetime of stories. Her weathered hands trembled slightly as she reached into her purse, and what happened next would shatter everything he thought he knew about his own past. Marcus had been working double shifts at Rosie's Diner for 3 years straight, his feet aching by the end of each 14-hour day, but he never complained. At 28, he'd learned that life didn't owe anyone anything, especially not a kid who'd grown up bouncing between foster homes with nothing but a worn photograph and questions nobody could answer. The diner, with its cracked vinyl booths and flickering neon sign, had become more than just a job. It was the only stable thing he'd ever known. The Saturday lunch rush had finally died down when she rolled in. Marcus noticed her immediately, not because of the wheelchair, but because of the way she surveyed the half-empty diner as if searching for something she'd lost long ago. She was African-American, probably in her 70s, dressed simply but with a dignity that commanded respect. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, and despite the wheelchair, she carried herself with remarkable grace. "Good afternoon, ma'am," Marcus said, approaching her table with his usual warm smile. "What can I get started for you today?" She ordered simply coffee and a slice of apple pie, but her eyes never left his face. It made Marcus slightly uncomfortable, though he couldn't explain why. He'd served thousands of customers, endured his share of stares and worse, but this was different. This woman wasn't looking at him with prejudice or indifference. She was studying him like he was a puzzle she was desperately trying to solve. When Marcus returned with her order, his hands steady despite the strange electricity in the air, she thanked him softly. Her voice cracked with emotion, and he noticed tears gathering in the corners of her eyes. "Are you all right, ma'am? Can I get you anything else?" Marcus asked, genuine concern flooding through him. Instead of answering, she reached into her purse with shaking hands and pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping, folded and refolded so many times the creases had nearly worn through. She held it out to him, and Marcus, confused but curious, took it. The paper was dated 28 years ago. The headline read, "Local hero loses life-saving. Family from burning building." But it was the photograph that made Marcus's world tilt on its axis. A young black man in a postal worker's uniform smiled back at him, and Marcus knew that face. He'd know it anywhere because it was like looking in a mirror that showed him 20 years into the future. "That's my father," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. The photograph he'd carried his whole life, the only one he owned, was of this same man, though younger, holding a newborn baby. The woman in the wheelchair let out a sob, covering her mouth with one hand. "I know," she said. "I'm Eleanor Winters. Your father, David, saved my life and my daughter's life that night. We lived in the apartment above where the fire started." Marcus sank into the booth across from her, the diner and its few remaining customers fading into background noise. His hands trembled as he held the clipping. Shame and anger warred within her. "They told me at the orphanage that both my parents were gone." "House fire. That's all they ever said." Eleanor nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Your father went back in one more time." They told him everyone was out, but he heard crying. It was Mrs. Chen's cat, trapped on the 3rd floor. He went back for it. She paused, struggling with the weight of the memory. The building collapsed. "He'd handed me my daughter just seconds before." Marcus felt his own eyes burning. All these years he'd known his father was a hero, but he'd never known the full story, never known who he'd saved or why. "For 28 years I've lived with this," Eleanor continued. "The doctor said I'd never walk again after that night. Smoke inhalation damaged my lungs, and I fell from a 2nd-story window when your father rescued us. But that's nothing compared to the weight I've carried knowing your father died, knowing he left behind a child." "How did you find me?" Marcus asked. Eleanor smiled through her tears. "I never stopped looking. Your father talked about his baby boy all the time, showed everyone your picture, said you were going to change the world." She pulled out another item from her purse, a small notebook. "I kept everything. Every lead, every dead end. I hired investigators over the years, spent every spare penny I had. My daughter, she's a lawyer now, and she helped me search too. 2 weeks ago, we finally found you." Marcus couldn't speak. The enormity of it all crashed over him like a wave. "I came here every day this week," Eleanor said, watching, making sure it was really you before I approached. I had to be certain. You have his eyes, his smile, his kind heart. I watched you help that young mother with 3 kids, how you paid for their meal out of your own pocket when her card was declined. I saw you stay late to help the cook whose car broke down. You're exactly who your father said you'd be. I don't understand, Marcus said, wiping his eyes. Why now? Why find me after all this time? Eleanor reached across the table and took his hand. Because I owe your father everything. Because my daughter graduated from law school, got married, and just gave birth to her first child, my grandson. None of that would have happened, if not for David, and I couldn't let another day pass without you knowing what your father did, who he saved, and how his sacrifice rippled forward. She squeezed his hand. But also because you deserve to know you're not alone. You have family now if you want it. Marcus looked down at their joined hands, dark skin against dark skin. Generations connected by tragedy and heroism and impossible chance. My daughter wants to meet you, Eleanor continued. She named her son David after your father. We've set up a fund. Everything we would have spent on the investigation, it's yours. For school, for whatever dreams you have. It's not about money, Marcus. It's about making sure David's son has every opportunity that our family has had because of him. The weight of working double shifts, of exhaustion and loneliness, of wondering if his father's sacrifice meant anything. All of it lifted from Marcus's shoulders. He wasn't alone. He'd never been alone. I'd like that, Marcus finally said. I'd like to meet your family. My family. Eleanor smiled, radiant despite her tears. There's one more thing. She pulled out a bundle of letters tied with string. Your father wrote to you, started the day you were born. The fire marshal found them in a fireproof box in the rubble. I've kept them safe all these years, waiting for this moment. Marcus took the letters with reverent hands, seeing his name written in his father's handwriting on the first envelope. 28 years of questions about to be answered. As the late afternoon sun streamed through the diner windows, Marcus sat with Eleanor reading his father's words, learning about the man who'd given everything so others could live. And in that cracked vinyl booth at Rosie's Diner, 2 families became one. Bound together by sacrifice, perseverance, and the unbreakable power of love that transcends even death. The black waiter who'd served thousands of meals, with quiet dignity discovered he'd been serving something greater all along. The legacy of a hero who'd taught him, even in absence, that the measure of a life isn't in years lived but in lives touched, in chances given, in love freely offered without expectation of return.